is that in the past at least, they tend to move one step ahead of the others. Before we reflect, not on our achievements, you've heard of our achievements, you know of our achievements. Before we reflect on the system that came after the abolition of slavery, and incidentally the Jamaicans have a point. For the Jamaicans, 1834 is of little or no significance. The significant date for them is 1838, after the period of apprenticeship had come to an end. Maybe they were less revolutionary than we were. They didn't have their demons, though they had their maroons. But before we reflect on the system that came hereafter or thereafter, let me just give you a little detail. Towards the time of the abolition of slavery, when the consciences of the British legislators and public, we were told in the history books which we had to read, had been stirred, had been already stirred, in July the 9th, on July the 9th, 1821, a local guide was published reminding persons that no slave is permitted to walk after 8 at night. Unless he has a pass or a lantern. Must have a pass to show or a lantern to show his face, perhaps, otherwise his face was too dark to be seen at night. On pain of being put in the stock and the owner being obliged to pay $2 for his or her release, exclusive of the charge for boarding such slave. Now tell me, what's the difference between him and a horse? Or him and a goat? Or him and a jackass? Or him and a horse? The only difference is how much you pay. And perhaps when you look at 1821 and compare it with 1984, what with devaluation and the basket and all that sort of thing, $2 would be somewhat more than the $20 I understand you have to pay now. That was the slave who was brought here to be modified by the influence of Christianity. Put in the stocks, if he walks at night after 8 without a pass or a lantern, they might have added that if he smiled, it would be all right. Now sugar, a continued dominance in this country thereafter. In the case of the descendants of Africans who tended to be urbanized in the villages, the punishment for them was easy and condign. flood their villages, destroy their crops, and force them into impecuniosity. In the case of the Indians, rule them with a heavy hand and ride them with whip and spur. Promise them a shilling a day when you are picking them up in India, but give them 4 shillings a day when you bring them to British Guyana. The Indians were human beings too. And there was strife starting from the 1840s right through and culminating in the 1948 resistance of Enmore, which we commemorate each year in June. If one is frightfully academic, one would be inclined to differentiate between slavery and indentured labor. But the conditions of living were hardly different. The disrespect for human dignity was identical. And a hair's breadth separated the economic potential of either group during this terrible period. All right. By 1953, as a result of a national struggle, when it was recognized that the trade union movement alone was not capable of carrying the fight to the imperialists, the struggle on the political front developed more fully. I'm not suggesting that there was no struggle on the political front, but I would say that by 1953, the struggle on the political front developed more fully, and there was a greater coordination of effort between the trade unions and the political grouping. What happened? A constitution was suspended. Why? Because they say we were going communist. Now, we are told that it is of the essence of democracy that the people should be permitted to choose the form of government which they want. But I am reminded of a certain head of state, not in the Caribbean, who called together the 3 persons who were to choose a vice-chancellor of a particular university. And he said, gentlemen, you may choose anyone you like as vice-chancellor, provided it's one of these 2. So far as the British are concerned, you're free to choose your form of government, provided it is acceptable to the British. That was their philosophy in 1953. What is their present philosophy now? We shall see later. In 1966, we gained independence. Was slavery abolished in 1966? I say no. Well, in 1970, we became a cooperative republic. Was slavery abolished? I say no.